Hi, I'm Sean Danielle, and this is a picture of me with my big brother Dwayne. The first picture of us together, back in 1982. And this is the most recent picture I have of me with my big brother Dwayne, about 7 years ago, as I celebrated his wedding. 6 years ago on this date, Dwayne was killed in a car crash. He was driving home from work on Route 24 just south of Boston when a truck merged out of the breakdown lane, not looking to see if there were any cars, as far as we can tell. In a moment, 46 years of life over. I am nostalgic and sentimental, and when dates of significance come back, feelings come back for me. And I was thinking about how much I've learned from my big brother Dwayne in the 6 years since he's left us. So this story is going to be perhaps long-winded and emotional. I am professionally a pastor, but this story is not strictly religious, as Dwayne wasn't. In fact, it's a little bit about the relationship between a non-religious and very religious little brother. So we were two of the 5 children in our family. The bookends, he the oldest and me the youngest. During childhood and adolescence, he was kind, but we were never close. We were never close because of a 10-year age gap, certainly, but also because we were raised in very different families. When I was very young, my parents got divorced, and when I was 11 and Dwayne was 21, our mother passed away. So Dwayne's childhood was in a 2-parent household with 5 kids, and his adolescence was as the oldest of 5 kids in a single mom household. My childhood was as the youngest of 5 kids in a single mom household, and my adolescence was as the only kid still at home with a single dad. And so we just didn't have the same upbringing. We didn't have the same stories. We are also very different in personality and disposition and interests. The way I would have described Dwayne most of my life was he always struck me as very normal, and that's because I wasn't. But Dwayne was really into sports. When he grew up, he loved parties. He enjoyed going to sports games and going to parties. He enjoyed beer, and he served as a bartender, and he was bubbly and outgoing and had a much thicker Boston accent than I have. And that's who he was. And for those who don't know who I am, I'm awkward, shy, autistic theater nerd who's super into religion. We just didn't have much to connect about. He was never mean, though. He always found ways to be supportive, sometimes in a teasing big brother way, but nonetheless supportive. When we were kids, he, as the oldest son, would drive to the far north of Maine on hiking trips and whitewater rafting trips and ski trips. And these are some of the few things where Dwayne and I were completely in sync in our interests. And our family is ethnically Quebecois. Our grandfather was from a Quebecois background, but we grew up in Massachusetts. And for most of my extended family, that was an interesting fact. But for me, starting when I was around 7, it was an obsession. You know, the moment we had a family vacation to Canada and I saw bilingual signs and realized that French wasn't just this weird little quirk of Grampy's family, but there's a whole country that I could live in that spoke French, I became obsessed with everything French and with Canada, and with the idea that as soon as I could, I would move to Canada, which I did. But on those road trips, even when we didn't cross the border, if we got close enough to the border, though he was into, rock music of his era, he would occasionally take a break and say, all right, enough Pearl Jam. I'm going to listen to Canadian radio for the little dork in the back. And sure, he was a big brother and he called me the little dork in the back. But he did it. He put on French Canadian radio for a few minutes on these road trips just so that I could be happy. When I was in high school, he went to my drama club plays. He teased me for them, but he went. when I was graduating from college and I gave the speech at my graduation, he showed up. He came. And he was a waiter at the time, and he arranged for us to have a really nice dinner on the Boston waterfront afterwards. A few years later, when I was ordained as a pastor, he came, though he wasn't religious himself. I have one moment that I remember really fondly, that the first time I guest preached at a church while I was in seminary, he and some of my family came to support, including many non-religious members of my family being supportive. And he walked into Mattapoisett Congregational Church wearing his baseball cap, and my father, former Army member and elementary school teacher, just popped it off of his head as he came in. That was the kind of loving, supportive big brother he was. We didn't really become emotionally close until I had kids, because suddenly we had something more in common. I had twins. They were quite premature. They were in the hospital a long time, and he visited and he was supportive. And when they finally came home, he came and visited me for just a whole afternoon, helping me mix formula and showing me postures where I could hold to have one free hand, which, he had two children spaced apart, but with twins, there were more advanced techniques that he helped me sort out and figure out. Even though ultimately I lived inconveniently, quite a drive away in Montreal, he brought his kids to come visit me and explore Montreal with us. Now, in my family, we are not touchy-feely, hyper-emotional people who call each other and have long conversations about feelings. We see each other at holidays and we have a good time and we care about one another, but it's not frequent that we would ever call out of the blue. A few months before his death, he called me and he said, "I need advice." I was 36, and I think it was the first time he ever said, "I need advice from you." As a combination of big brother stoicism, I suppose, but he never had needed my advice. There was some drama in extended relationships we shared, fighting about homophobia, and he being non-religious and very sportsy, he was kind of equally unfamiliar with the evangelical world and the gay rights world, and he knew that I had marched in pride parades with my church. I spoke both languages. And so we chatted and we talked about how to navigate the situation he was trying to navigate. It became the longest conversation I think we ever had. And he said something very interesting in that conversation. When he had visited me in Montreal the last time, he took his kids to La Ronde, our Six Flags. And I mentioned how much he loved amusement parks. And he said to me, "Oh, I hate amusement parks." Which, that resonated with me because autistic, overstimulated, I do not like theme parks like Six Flags at all. And he said, "I go because my kids love it." And we had a conversation about all the things that we do that we hate because we love the people who love them. And it didn't occur to me until that conversation, until he bluntly had said it, that he did so many things he hated because he loved the people who were doing them. And what a lasting lesson that has been for me. We do things we hate because we love the people who are doing them. And then sudden flashbacks of all the times he went to high school theater productions and Harvard commencement speeches and ordination services. And that was the love language. Not, "I'm so proud of you, bud, I love you," but just, "I'm here." I think a lot about how in many topics that are really sensitive and really controversial right now, people act as if understanding somebody, understanding why they live the way they live, understanding why they identify the way they identify, understanding them is a prerequisite to treating them with respect. And Dwayne modeled something for me that has been life-changing, which is no. You don't have to understand somebody to love them. In fact, if you just act out in love, if you just do the loving thing to the person who's weird and makes no sense to you, the understanding will follow. Maybe, and maybe not. I still don't understand the appeal of watching an entire professional football game. I don't enjoy it at all, but he had season tickets to the Patriots, and I get excited about the Patriots now because I know how happy it would make Dwayne. You don't have to understand people to love them. I think ultimately that was the big brother example that I didn't know until a retrospect that he set so well, which is this. You know, there was always a teasing dynamic because he was so cool and normal. He was Patriots season ticket holding, Boston accented, hardworking older brother who had this dweeb of a little brother who just loved musical theater and speaking French. And how do you make, and going to church? Like, how does a normal guy make sense of a little brother like that? And I don't think he ever made sense of me. But that wasn't a condition of love. I know people who understand me and are loving to me. I know people who think I'm a complete weirdo freak who are mean to me. But Dwayne actually never, as far as I could tell, relented thinking that I was kind of a weirdo freak. And loved me. That's sort of more impressive. Now, the story I don't think I have shared with anybody before is that because, you know, I'm a pastor, and I did his wedding. I also did his funeral, and I tried to do his funeral in a way that respected who he was, not who I am. Scandalously not very religious to some folks who expected me to dial up my pastorness more, but I wanted to be faithful to Dwayne. At the meal, the reception after his memorial service, so many of his friends who I didn't know, or who maybe I met when I was a little kid, and they were in their 20s, came up to me and shared stories. I am so much more emotional than I thought I would be. Sorry, TikTok and YouTube and Facebook, because I thought this would be more general principles and less about my life. But here we are. So many of these friends of Dwayne said, "Oh, are you the little brother who lives up in Canada? And are you the one who's the pastor? Are you the one who went to Harvard and Yale? Are you the one who used to work at Plymouth Plantation? Are you the one who was a dance teacher? Are you the one who learned Irish and speaks Irish? Are you the..." And all these things about me that, you know, I thought made us so different and made us not connect, and some of which, you know, he teased me for to my face. He was talking about me behind my back with love for years. A stranger said, "Oh, I remember the day you graduated from Harvard," because Dwayne was so excited that he got to go to Harvard and see his little brother give a graduation speech. And I didn't know. I knew he came. Oh my goodness. All right, so is there a moral? You don't have to be like somebody to like them. You don't have to love what they love to love them. Sometimes love is Going to Six Flags when you freaking hate it because you love the people you're going with. Anyway, tell the people in your life you love them, even if it's awkward. Maybe especially if it's awkward. Especially if you come from that kind of family that doesn't make phone calls until it's to share news that somebody's died. I made a Facebook post earlier today mentioning some of the things Dwayne did for me, much more calmly. He named me. The fifth kid, parents were out of ideas. He didn't speak French. Jonathan Daniel is the legal name he gave me. He taught me to rollerblade. He took me skiing. He took me hiking. He taught me how to hold my baby's bottles, and a way that allowed me to get more stuff done. I also joked that, the wedding I performed for him, he was in his 40s, and I said, I wish you would intervene and tell me how to find love in your 40s. And I don't know, if it will work, but I kind of imagine his advice as being, I don't know, why don't you just freaking tell people how you feel, dork. Tell people how you feel, you dorks.